Hey, what's up? It's John Samuel, and welcome to All Access Live. I'm super excited today because we have Mark Jones from the accessibility team over at Disney. And I just got back from Disney a few weeks ago, and Mark was super kind to just chat with me before my visit. And now I'm super excited to have him on the show to just learn more about him and his background and just learn more about the work he's doing. So welcome, Mark.
John, thank you. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure to be kind of out there talking a bit more about what we do. So I appreciate you including me in your broadcast today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. And, so Mark, you have an interesting story and just like the way you got into into this field. I would love just to learn a little bit about yourself and kind of, your background and how you are connected to the community.
Yeah, for sure. So for your listeners, I think the term CODA is now one that you already know what it means. Thanks to the film, which
Yes.
of course received critical acclaim, a lot of awards. But I am a CODA, so that's sort of my connection into this space. So my parents are deaf. I also have one sibling. His name's Paul. He is deaf also. So growing up in West Hartford, Connecticut, I was the only person in my household who was not deaf. So with that came some amount of expectation my parents had to try to help where I could, where communication was needed. So answering the phone, answering the door, sometimes helping my parents serve as an interpreter for them when they were out and about in the community, needing somebody to be with them. I grew up in Connecticut in the 70s. So before the ADA, so there weren't requirements per se for interpreters. So I kind of helped my parents do that. Mine was a little bit different than I guess the movie, in that my parents were not completely reliant on me to kind of help with communication. They were very self-sufficient. My dad worked in insurance and was able to do things on his own and was able to communicate on his own. And I was just kind of there to kind of help out. But anyway, that sort of connected me into this work. Had a passion for Disney. Growing up, my grandparents lived near Disney. So during summer vacation, we would always go to see them. And it was always on the list to go to Disney. So I had a connection to Disney. Had a chance in college to intern at Disney, which I signed up for, something called the college program that some of your listeners may know about. So did that, worked at Disney MGM Studios, at now Disney's Hollywood Studios, at an attraction that is unfortunately closed. That was called the Great Movie Ride. So I worked at the Great Movie Ride, which is now Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but I had great experience there. Went to school at the University of Tennessee, graduated, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And just kind of came into an opportunity where Disney was putting together a team to do nothing but think about accessibility. So focus on accessibility, not have it be somebody's other job. Like this was going to be your job. So that opportunity presented itself to me. I was asked to join the team in 1997. And help us establish how we were going to deliver services for guests with hearing disabilities, including the providing of sign language interpreters and some other things. So started in 97, what I do and kind of where I did that kind of grew over time. Spent some time, by the way, at the Disneyland Resort in California. So I've been with Disney this, gosh, I got to do the math. About 6 months from now will be my 25th anniversary with the company.
Congrats.
And of that, about 7 of those years I spent at the Disneyland Resort. But I currently, in my role, I lead our accessibility and services for guests with disabilities work here at the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando.
Awesome. That's quite the adventure. And you were talking about 25 years, right? Because I think when I was there, we're celebrating the 50 years. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So the 50-year anniversary. So you've been there half the time, essentially. And I guess I didn't realize that you joined in 1997 and, 20 years earlier when you went with your folks. How do you think that experience has changed in 1977 to?
Yeah, I think, I just think it's all about people's awareness around disabilities, I think has changed. I mean, not just at Disney, but everywhere. I think, a person having a disability and wanting to travel, like to go somewhere on vacation was probably a really like crazy thought in the 70s. But you kind of fast forward to today and, we think nothing of traveling, right? Including people with disabilities. So I just think, there's companies out there and I'll pat myself on the back in Disney to say that we recognize that people with disabilities want to travel. And where would you want to travel? Disney's probably on your short list. Like if you want to go somewhere. I think we recognize that people with disabilities want to travel. And with that, why not offer as many services as we can to make that a good experience for somebody who's coming here to Central Florida?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, It because I went like my first time going was like in the 84, 85 when I was infant. I guess I actually went, I guess when I was a newborn, like my first year. So I've gone like 3, 4 times in my life. I
And
went to cook.
you remember it exactly, right? You remember
Exactly,
it.
but it's cool to see the pictures and kind of, those are the memories I have now that I can't see. I have the memories of those pictures of me going, right? Like standing in front of Magic Kingdom, and to be able to go into it this year and going as an adult, and then also not being able to see through my own eyes, but hearing it through my kids' eyes, right? It's really something special. So you're right. It is somewhere that a lot of people, anybody, wants to go, and it is something super special. And you talked about your brother also is deaf. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and so like, as a brother, I think it's interesting because I think we often talk about, well, whether being a parent or being a child, having children. But what about having a brother? Like, how has that relationship been? Like, how have you and your brother been able to, like, how do you support your brother? How does your brother support you? And how's that relationship?
Yeah, he's got a super personality. He's a good guy. He doesn't live super far from me. He's over on the west coast of Florida.
Yeah.
So he and I catch up as much as we can. He's I hate to say, very typical deaf guy. He's very passionate about getting out into the community and wanting to interact with deaf people and communicate through sign language. So a lot of times, he'll share with me things that he's going to or attending. Some of them are ones I've heard of, and others are perhaps things I didn't know about. So, my brother almost in a way kind of becomes my further connection into kind of all that's happening in the community. So he and I get a chance to go to a lot of events together. But he's got a real sensible approach to his deafness, in that he tries to make every opportunity that he has an educational moment for somebody that he interacts with who may not really understand, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Here's a deaf person in front of me. Like, how do I handle this? So he's really good about kind of making, like, kind of adding kind of a little comedy into being a good educator. So at any rate, he's been a real, big inspiration for me. I have that same approach when I want to talk about disabilities with anybody. Is I want it to be something that is an engaging conversation, because I know sometimes the topic of disability, especially when you start talking about the code and the rules, like, it gets rough. So trying to make it relevant to a person who probably doesn't know all of the details around it, but just really wants to know, what is it? Tell me, give me something tangible. So I always try to serve as an ambassador to kind of get out and do just that. And again, my brother been a real big inspiration in getting me to a place where I feel I do that in a good way.
That's great. And how does your own experiences, how does that, how do you share those experiences? Because I talk about proximity builds empathy. How do you think your own personal lived experiences help your own team? Like, how do you share that with folks with your own
Yeah, for sure. So, growing up, I saw the challenges that my parents faced. I mean, as I said, they were very self-sufficient, very educated, very smart people. They were able to do a lot. But even with that, they still had limitations, not limitations that they put on themselves, but limitations that others put on them. So, there is always that for me, that's always out there. Like, I am all about having people self-advocate for themselves, but I also know sometimes that may go on, pardon the cliche, deaf ears. So I always try to get out there and be an advocate as well, because perhaps what I say as somebody without a disability may resonate differently with the end person, the audience that we're trying to reach out to. So I try to do that as I can, as an advocate and as an ally, but not a person with a disability. So, and it's, again, I wouldn't have been doing this work at Disney for 25 years if I wasn't passionate about this. So hopefully that comes out in our conversation today, John. But I and the team that work with me, we're all very passionate. As I said, we do nothing but think about better serving our guests with disabilities. Like, I don't have like another job too. Like, that's my job. That's what I do.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? So there's a lot of organizations that it's like, you do this and this, right?
Yeah, you're an HR professional, but you also have to manage the accessibility work, right? Exactly that.
Exactly, and and so, what do you think organizations like? What would you, if you were talking to another organization, be like, hey, you really need to think about this. Why is it important that organizations separate the two?
Yeah, I think having a strong disability presence in an organization is key, and some organizations have tackled that differently. I think the way that we've chosen to do that at Disney, I think is the right way. Have dedicated individuals who do that, make those paid positions, make it where that person can focus on that versus, and not that there's anything wrong with other approaches that exist, but there are places out there where, to your point, somebody is doing the work in accessibility, but it's also in addition to a whole other laundry list of things they're accountable for that have nothing to do with accessibility. And then there's the other part out there of those companies who they put all of their accessibility focus into a resource group, a diversity resource group, which is important, by the way. I think every company should have those too, but I don't think that should be your sole method as a company to, promote accessibility and inclusion in your company. You almost need both. You need dedicated employee resource groups, but you also need a dedicated team to focus on accessibility, whatever that is for your business. If you're a digital business, have professionals that understand the accessibility work in the digital space, and that's what they do. If it's physical accessibility, have people who do that, and that's all they do. I think the combination of those things, I think is, I think a really good formula for success.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring up the ERGs, the employee resource groups, right? And I feel like in some organizations, I don't know that. I mean, they're putting a lot of pressure on that that ERG to do this accessibility or do that, right?
Yeah, especially if those members who are very passionate and are involved in their ERG because of their passion also have those day jobs, which really limit how much time they can dedicate to perhaps something that's actually more near and dear to them, but they just don't have the time because they got to get these other things done that have nothing to do with accessibility.
Exactly. It's not part of their KPI, right? And I feel like because they're not getting compensated being part of the ERG, but it's something that they feel passionate about and having that community. So yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I've been like seeing a lot more of, right? Like, what are the expectations of ERGs, and I mean, is it fair?
For sure.
But you participated in the college program at the Disney college program. What do you mean as you think about your own experience in college? Aside from Disney, what do you think are good opportunities for for people interested in getting to accessibility? What are some ways, like in college, that companies could do to help get more people interested in disability inclusion and accessibility? What do you think organizations could do?
Yeah, I think it really does start with the organizations themselves, right? So organizations having the awareness to want to go and recruit for internship positions. They offer the college program that I mentioned here at Disney. I mean, it's a pretty structured program. It's a pretty large program. It includes.
Could you talk to what is it? Yeah, what is it? What is a college program at Disney like when you went through it? Or maybe what it looks like today. What is
that? Yeah, it's a pretty massive program. There's a lot of pieces and parts to that. So the college program, you could say, includes lots of different types of internships.
Okay.
But the sort of the baseline college program internship provides you as a college student with an opportunity to come live here in Central Florida and work at the Walt Disney World Resort. And what you're working or where you're doing your role could be a lot of different things. It could be front line, you're working at an attraction, you're working in a merchandise location, you could be working in one of our call centers, you could have a back of house role where you're working and doing something. So the types of roles, it's pretty wide, but the great cool thing about the program is it's structured in that you as a participant, you don't need to figure out, well, where am I going to live? Like, how am I going to get there? Like, all of that's already kind of planned out for you. There's a housing development, for example, that we have where you live with other folks on the program, and you're meeting now. You have an immediate network of people that you know because you're now all here on this program. You're living in the same development, but you're now meeting people from literally across the world who are here in Orlando participating in the program. You all have different jobs, you have different schedules, but you kind of already have this sort of instant community of folks to hang out with. So it's a great program, I think, in general. Obviously biased. I work here and I was on it myself. I thought it was great. But there's a lot of folks who still work for the company who began their journey in that exact same way. It's great for people with disabilities. There's a lot of effort and opportunity put into trying to find the right role for somebody who has a disability, whatever that disability might be. There are also more advanced level internships for individuals who are, looking for something specific. I want to work in marketing at Disney, or I want to work in engineering services at Disney. So there are also internships that you could apply for that are a very specific job title. So, and that all kind of falls under that same umbrella of the internship program. But, we're no different than a lot of companies out there that do similar types of things. I think the housing thing for us is probably what makes it a little bit unique, which, again, for some folks, that's kind of a stress point, is like, I really want to move to this town and do this, but I don't know about the living. And that seems, so we've kind of taken that concern out of the equation.
No, I think that's a great point. As you talk about it, like, the different avenues that people are interested in going in, but then having, getting that experience, but then also having that housing. Because I know that, a lot of people, it's a challenge to move, if you have a
Sure.
disability, and to be able to have that community and have that housing and have that aspects of the opportunity taken care of is really,
Yeah, we just opened a brand new facility, state of the art, really, really nice, really nice. I mean, I'm a little jealous, like going there, I'm like, wow, this is really nice. Because when I was on the college program, it was a more traditional housing apartment complex. It was nice for the
yeah.
time, but the new one that I've gone to called Flamingo Crossings is super nice. It's really, really a cool place with a lot of really cool amenities.
Yeah. You've worked in you've worked in California on the Disneyland, and and have you worked anywhere else overseas? Did you do any other?
I didn't work there per se, but I have spent some time at the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. And I also worked as an intern for a full year at the Disneyland Paris Resort in France.
Oh,
So
very cool.
that doesn't count towards my seniority, nor does my college program. But I did have a chance to work a year at Disneyland Paris. Nothing to do with accessibility. This was while I had just graduated college. But anyway,
Okay.
yes, I had a chance to be in France as well.
Has there anything from those different experiences? What were some of the key things you learned from working in, like, uh, in those different parks? I mean, those different venues that you brought back to your own current job, and what are
Yeah,
the
I
benefits?
just think a lot of it is just really, it's amazing for me the impact that Disney and the Disney brand has on the world. I mean,
Yes.
my opinion, those places I've mentioned, Disney is like it's a big deal. Like when Disneyland Paris first opened, I mean, it was kind of a big deal, right?
Oh
When all
yeah.
that was happening, and I worked there at Disneyland Paris around 1996, so it's been a good number of years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it also gave me a little bit more of a more worldly view of things. I mean, when I was in those locations, I didn't have accessibility on my mind other than my personal experience with my family.
Yeah.
But even then, with really not being in the work as I am today, I even noticed like there was a pretty conscious effort to think about accessibility in places where perhaps there wasn't any governmental rule requiring it, but it was just something that makes good sense. And and as I've transitioned and now in the role that I'm in, that's always something that I share with all of the partners that I interact with internally, is that focusing on guest service should trump just the idea of what we'll call basic compliance. So that's a message you've probably chatted
Yeah.
with others before, but the notion of we all can read a code. We can all read the ADA and say, oh, well, this is kind of what we have to do.
Yeah.
The conversation shouldn't be that, though. The conversation should be, what should we do? And if we can get to what should we do, we solve the code piece or the compliance piece,
Yeah.
but we also just provide a better product for our guests. It's just better. It's just better all around for everybody. So it's just kind of trying to, use that message. And I think being able to travel and see other places just has kind of gotten I and the team into, being the advocates for that concept of let's just do what we should do, because that's the better approach.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we talk about, right? Accessibility and inclusion. It doesn't just help one group of people, it helps everyone, right? And I think
Absolutely.
that, one of the things I was hoping to have, and you and I've talked about, is because after my experience coming back from Disney World, I shared my own user experience and the pros, the cons, and everything, right? And but one of the coolest things I got was this: we had a cocktail. I think we first had it in Hollywood Studios at the Star Wars World, right? And they had a little light in the cocktail, and I thought it was so cool because with my low vision, I was able to see the light, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is great! It's such a great product." And I started collecting them, and so has there, and now, because like I thought it'd be a good way for me to identify what is my drink, and also make sure I don't knock it over. And has there been anything in your own experience that you've seen that's like it was designed for one group of people that's actually benefited? A lot
Yeah,
of great.
one of those projects that what was a real game changer. So the Magic Kingdom for you, you know what I mean when I say that. But for those
Yeah.
of you listening who have never been to the Magic Kingdom is one of our 4 theme parks here at Walt Disney World, and it's the more quintessential design. So when you think of Disney, most people think of the Magic Kingdom. It's the one with the castle. It has a main street. It has Adventureland and Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, all of that. So Main Street was built as very much a kind of turn of the century street that was supposed to be representative of where Walt Disney grew up in Missouri. So that's kind of the baseline of the design of it. But it's very turn of the century. It's got kind of almost like a kind of that general store and
Yep.
very, very typical kind of street. But when it was built, the designers went to the degree of, let's make it as close as we can to that sort of feel. So lots of curbs, not a lot of curb cuts. So some things that, perhaps were problematic, especially for somebody with low vision or somebody using a mobility device. So as time has passed, we've now gone in, and that's sort of the point of this, we've gone in and removed many of the curbs, especially in the area towards the castle where we have a large planter with a giant Walt Disney statue there.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be surrounded by curbs.
Oh,
And
really?
we've removed the curbs with the goal of that removal to benefit people with mobility disabilities and wheelchairs and ECVs and being able to get on and off there. But the byproduct of that was it also helps people with visual disabilities. It's one less thing to trip on. And then it also helps moms and dads out there with strollers and little people, little children who, have difficulty perhaps going up and down, curbs and steps. It also helps, the kids out there to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So, I kind of benefited this like larger group, even though the goal was to really try to help those with mobility disabilities.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to it. I think the intentionality, and I think that what, I guess what y'all are known for is that magical experience, right? And I think that's something that I hope that organizations can take from, what you just shared is the intentionality of creating an inclusive experience, because it doesn't just help one group of people, but it helps everyone.
Absolutely. Captioning, I think, is another one, John, right?
Yep.
You go now into a bar or something, and a lot of times they'll have the captioning on.
Yeah.
It's helping everybody. If everybody wants to know the score of the game or what that last play was or what's happening on the television, the captioning does that, right? And that's not just for somebody with a hearing disability.
Yeah, right. No, but this is awesome. Mark, thank you so much for just sharing your own experiences and the work that you're doing. And how can, visitors to Disney, what should they do if they want to request services or, just to make sure that they have the best experience? What should they do? Where should they go?
Yeah, I think for any of your listeners, it all starts with you doing a little bit of homework as a guest. So, a lot of that can start with doing your own research with no better place to start than our website, which is disneyworld.com. Accessible site, lots of information there, lots of chances for you to digest everything that is our 30 square miles of property. So there's a lot to do. So part of it just becomes understanding the options. And then from there, start determining what services are best for you. So all of the services that exist for guests with disabilities can be found there, including specific services for those with visual disabilities, things like audio description, braille materials, tactile materials, those kinds of things can be found on that site. And then from there, if there's a need to further connect, there's information there on how you can get to an actual person to talk a little bit more about what unique needs you might have. So it's a bit of a journey to plan a vacation to Walt Disney World, because again, it's not just one place with one gate. There's this large property with a lot of options. So that's my strong suggestion, is for any of you who are even thinking about a visit, do your homework, get comfortable understanding the property. Because if you were to just call me and you wanted to chat about your visit, I'd have to give you the 8-hour download of all that it is for you to even understand that before you even start able to ask questions that maybe are specific to your needs.
Exactly right. So, but I think y'all do a great job of having all that information laid out on the disability services pages. And, and you're right. There's, anybody visiting, disability or not, you have to just prepare to go there. And there's a lot of homework that goes in and preparation goes in, because it is an experience. And so, yes, but I think the website has a lot of great information. And so go check that out. And I do highly recommend it. The whole experience was just such a wonderful time, not just for me, but for my kids, and to be able to share that with them and my family. It was just wonderful. And the cast members there made me feel welcome. And so thank you, Mark, for just, being just an ally and being, someone for me to talk to and to share my experiences with, and just helping to improve that for everyone.
Yeah, of course, John. And thank you for all that great feedback you provided about your trip, and also, of course, the opportunity to be on the show with you today. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks. And we will be back in a couple of weeks, and same time, same place. And so thank you all for showing up and participating. We're so thankful. And thank you, Annie, for your continuous support in producing and setting up everything. And we will talk to you all soon. Bye.